the more they complained and say, we are not wise. In fact, happened in 60s. God is dead. We don't need him. We've outgrown him. Professing themselves to be wise, they foolishly refused God and will suffer the consequences of that. I don't want to get my application into that too much right now because that will come later. But I want to just give a little quick word of hope as we look at this text. There is a restraining influence on the depravity of man. There is a restraining influence on depraved societies. And it may not be exactly what you think it is. Because the restraining influence on societies is not God intervening and stopping societies from doing wrong. We'll see in this text God actually gives societies over to this. The restraining influence is the life that God saves and delivers from that depravity becomes the salt and the light within the society. And so the restraining influence within a depraved society is born-again Christians. This is what makes it so despicable when born-again Christians turn traitor and begin to live for the world. Because we are the restraining part of the society, and when we turn sides, what would you do in wartime? In fact, in our country, being a traitor in wartime is still punishable by death. Because it's so serious. Paul will get into this later in Romans, and I probably won't get till next year. But the reality is, there is hope. And the hope is a soul changed by the power of the gospel. That's the hope in the downward spiral of society's depraved condition. Only God, rescuing a soul from their own sin and setting their feet on the rock, will preserve the society from this danger. So this morning, it's kind of a bad news type of sermon. Just give you a heads up front. Paul works toward the good news in chapter 3, but the good news is better when we see how bad the bad news is. The grace of God is much mightier when we see how wicked sin is. And so Paul spends chapter 1, chapter 2, and half of chapter 3 showing how bad it is, and then he says, but it's not over. That's not it. So we'll get there. But we got to get through this first and understand this. Verse 22 says, they professed themselves to be wise and became fools. And then the rest of this text right here demonstrates how they foolishly are rejecting God and the dangers that come with that. Look at verse 23. And changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like to corruptible man, and to birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things. Wherefore God also gave them up to uncleanness through the lusts of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves, who changed the truth of God into a lie, and worshipped and served the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this cause God gave them up unto vile affections. For even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature, and likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one toward another, men with men, working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error which was meet. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient. Being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful, who knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. Obviously, we'll look at verses 28 on down next week, as that's a little bit too much of a text to bite off in one Sunday. We know that they became vain in their imaginations. Society becomes vain in their imaginations because they refuse to glorify God, neither were thankful. And we also see here they become proud in their cogitations, professing themselves to be wise, they become fools. They proved they truly were foolish to reject the revelation of God. So this morning I want us to see the foolish response of the unrepentant and God's further response to them. The foolish response to the unrepentance. The first thing that we see is found in verse 23. It says, and they changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image, made like to corruptible man, and to birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things. Or we could put it this way. The foolish exchange the reality for representation. How foolish for a starving man who knows he must eat or die to exchange the satisfying taste of a delightful meal for the picture contained within the recipe book describing the meal. The recipe and picture has the power to describe the delights of the meal. The recipe and picture has the ability to whet the appetite for the real. But the benefits of the recipe are only realized in the actual. Or concerning nature. How often I've stood before a scene such as the Grand Canyon or the Arches of Moab, the splendor of Old Faithful, or the Towers of Zion, and snapped a photo, only to look at the photo and wonder how something so magnificent like a towering geyser in person can look like a drizzle of water in a photograph. Or something as huge as the Grand Canyon can appear like a ditch in a picture. The representation is never as good as the real. It never is. And so in their foolishness is explained in that the glory of the incorruptible, the immortal God is theirs to worship, to adore, to know, to share in, to delight in. But instead they change, or this word means to exchange, to replace the reality of God, who has manifested himself clearly to them, to exchange the reality of God, says here, for an image like God. Corruptible image. Man, bipeds, birds, wingpeds. I don't know if there's a word for that. Quadrupeds is the word used here, and creeping creatures, it's a word in the Greek, basically means no-peds. Basically, he's trying to point this idea out. All that you could imagine that would be great in this creation, all the creation of God, they look at, and remember that creation is visible and it reminds of the invisible of God, right? But they say, I'm not sure I want, the society says, I'm not sure I want the invisible of God. His eternal power and divine nature, Godhead, that's a little bit scary. That means I have to be accountable. That means that I might have to listen to what he has to say. But isn't this a wonderful creation? Isn't this wonderful nature? And they've taken the image, which is supposed to remind of the real, and worship that instead. And exalt that instead. They exchange the incorruptible God, the glory of the incorruptible God, the worship, the honor of the incorruptible God, and instead they take in the image made like to corruptible man, to four-footed beasts. The image reminds of the real, but it is not God, and doesn't deserve the glory of God. The depravity of man finds value in exalting the image of God, but finds no satisfaction in the glory of the God from whom the image is derived. And that is a puzzling thing indeed. And I would say, why? Why would mankind, and like I'm saying, before I knew Christ, I was the same way. Why would we do that? Professing themselves to be wise, they become fools, because by nature we're foolish. We do that which is foolish. The unrepentant, unbelieving, therefore, are engaging in shadow games, seeking to satisfy the longing of the soul to come near to God, the desire to worship, as we talked about before, by engaging in amusements and ecology and materialism, while not recognizing that God truly brings eternal delight, not banal amusement. God provides the image, the material, to show us his goodness and grace. Unrepentant man rejects the reality of God in favor of a mere representation of God. And why would man do that? Because recognizing the real God removes man from the place of authority and control. If God is real, if he's really God, if God is real and he's really God, he's bigger than me. Right? And by nature, instinctively, that which is bigger than me deserves my respect. Therefore, if I can make God not bigger than me, I can still retain my respect myself, and I can retain in control of the situation. And so man's heart seeks to bring God to a different level, down a level, or, as this says, to completely refuse him, exchange him, lie to themselves, because man fancies that he can control the images. I can control the image, but I can't control the real, which is really a lie. Because we cannot control the image of the glory of God. We cannot control the material. We cannot control the banal amusements. They control us. Man is controlled, not controlling. It's just who they're submitted their control to. So they exchange the real for the representation. But also,